So this is going to be a very transparent video where I share a full breakdown of the cost of buying my very first investment property. So everything that I had to spend before I picked up the keys, and also how much I spent before getting the place ready for tenants. Hi, if you're new to my channel, my name is Jadesola, and on my channel I do share personal finance, property investing, and inspirational videos. So if this is your vibe, please make sure you subscribe so we can grow this community. But let's get right into this video. So I guess it's important that I start from the beginning, right? Everything on my journey to buy my very first investment property. So at the beginning of my property investing journey, I knew that I wanted to buy an investment property, and I also knew that I couldn't afford to buy in London because it would require me to have at least 25% of the purchase price. We know what London property prices are like, so I felt like, where I was going to invest in was up north. So I'd done a bit of research around what the property prices are like, and I felt like, that's where I could afford. So, but then the logistics of trying to go and look for properties up north, I just didn't want to deal with that. So I decided to work with a property sourcer. So this property sourcer was meant to help me with my end-to-end, property investing journey, from finding the property, linking me up with their mortgage broker, making sure that I get the mortgage, and also setting the house up for tenants. Right. So this was what they were meant to do for me, end to end. So the property sourcing fee was £4,000. So I had to pay that upfront. And then I was linked up with their mortgage broker that charged me another £700. And yeah, so that was like the initial cost. Now, I did get like one property from this person, but we got stuck at the finance stage, and their mortgage broker couldn't get me financing because I was on a visa. I didn't have my own residential home. So my first property, being an investment property, was not something a lot of, mainstream lenders were interested in. Also being on a visa was also something that was a bit challenging for their mortgage broker. But at this time, the property sourcer had instructed me to pay for conveyancing, right? So linked me up with their solicitor, and I had paid £700, but the financing wasn't coming through. So in the initial stage, I had parted away with £5,400, and after 6 months of not being able to get funding, I had to, cut my losses. I had to terminate my, agreement with this property sourcer, and then, try to ask for refund from everyone that had already paid. She was able to give me a refund of £2,500, but the solicitors and the mortgage broker, I couldn't get that refund back. So what I parted away with, which I would call executive property training cost, was £2,900. I had not even started at all. So yeah, that was one cost. So after I was able to terminate my contract with this person, and I decided to move on. So I did make 2 trips down to Liverpool, stayed in a hotel for a couple of days on each trip before I found my first investment property. Now, we did settle for £110,000 as the purchase price for the property. Now, I did have to get a new mortgage broker, and I ended up paying £450 for this mortgage broker. I did buy this property in a limited company, which means that the property is not in my personal name. So I obviously had to set up this limited company. It cost me £12 to do the setup. Now, we all know the major cost in buying any property is deposit. So for this property, because it's an investment property, I did have to put 25% of the purchase price down as my deposit. Now, there are some lenders that may allow you to do maybe 20%, but a lot of the time you will have to put down 25% deposit. So 25% of £110,000 was £27,500. So that was like the main cost in buying the property. Now, I did have to pay stamp duty as well. We all know that stamp duty on investment properties now is 5%, but at the time that I bought, which was in 2023, stamp duty was still 3% for the purchase price range that I bought at. So 3% of £110,000 is £3,300. So the next cost that I had to bear was the legal fees. So this is the conveyancing cost. So if you're not familiar with what a conveyancing process is about, it's simply the process of transferring ownership of the property from the seller to you as the buyer. So the legal fees that I paid was a little over £2,500. So the next thing that I had to pay for was valuation fees. So most lenders may charge you a valuation fee. So they would send someone over to the property or do a desktop valuation to try and check how much the property is worth. And in a case of an investment property as well, this individual is also going to check how much they think that the property can rent for. So if you're doing a buy-to-let mortgage, for example, they're going to check comparables within the area, how much rent you can get from that property within that area, right? So if you're buying a 3-bed, they will look at how much 3-bed properties would ordinarily rent for in that area. If you're doing like HMO, they would also look at comparables, like if there's a 3-bed HMO in the area, how much do they think that you can generate room by room? Same if you're getting a mortgage for serviced accommodation, they're going to look at comparables around, if there's serviced accommodations around, how much they think that you can potentially generate. Because for an investment property, your mortgage is not based on how much you earn as the director of the company or as the individual. It is primarily based on the value of the property and how much rental income that you can generate from the property, because they expect that, you know, you're paying your mortgage from the income from the property. It's an investment as it is. So the lender that I went with did charge me £207 for the valuation. Now, the next cost that I had to bear was survey costs. Now, I sent someone to the house to help me, you know, look through the property. They are professionals, they are regulated, and they are able to either eyeball a situation, you know, say, hey, you know what, there are cracks here, there's damp here, or you probably need to watch out for this. So they will help you, you know, look through the property. Depending on the kind of survey that you want to do, you're going to pay a bit more. So there are some that are very thorough, that they would go with drones, check the roof, go into the attic, check everything. There are some surveys that would cover all of that. Some will just maybe eyeball, you know, things that they can see on the surface. They will not go in depth. And that's what most investors would do, unless the property is actually like really, really bad. And essentially, like, these people are trying to help you identify issues within the property. They will then, you know, rate it based on, hey, this is okay, watch out for this, or this is quite dangerous, you might want to get additional you know, checks on this, right? If they are not able to do that. So for example, the person going for the survey may not be a damp expert, right? But they may go with like a tool that may help them to check the dampness within the property and tell you, hey, you probably need to watch out for this. However, get a damp expert to go into the property and check this further for you. Now, I did pay £526 for this survey, and this survey actually helped me to negotiate my initial offer on the property from £114,000 to £110. So they did identify some issues that I then now went back to the seller to say, hey, some of these issues have been identified and I would like, you know, a further discount on the property so that I can use that discount, so to speak, to fix the issue. So this survey is meant to help you just identify issues, and then you can make an informed decision from there. It doesn't mean that if an issue is identified, it's just, you know, back out of it. It's just so that you are aware of any potential issues that may happen with the property or that may be in the property, right? Now, the next cost that I had to incur was landlord's insurance. Now, I did take out landlord's insurance to protect the property from fire and burglary. Now, there are different types of add-ons you can add to your landlord's insurance. You can do content insurance as part of your insurance. You can do rental insurance as part of your landlord's insurance. So if your tenant stops paying, right, that insurance is going to kick in and then they will pay you for the months that the tenant has missed, right? You could also add like things like your legal fees. So if you have to take the tenant to court, you can add all of that. So the more add-ons you add to your insurance, the higher the premium, obviously. So I did the barest minimum landlord insurance, and that was £385. Now, everything that I just listed in this second phase after my executive property training cost was everything that I had to spend before picking up the keys, which is a total of £34,904.42 that I had to spend before picking up the keys. Now, after I picked up the keys, obviously, I had to spend a bit more. So the next set of costs that I had to incur were everything around things that you need to have before you can even, let out your property to anyone. And first on the list for me was the landlord selective license. Now, this license, depending on the council that your property is located at, you would have different licenses that you probably need to get as a landlord. And these licenses are meant to help tenants to just make sure that landlords are not giving them properties that are not up to standard. They want to make sure that the properties are in good conditions, and depending on even like what you're using the property for, there's certain things that you need to have within the property, like smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detector, all of this sort of things. They want to make sure that you have them in the house before you let the property out. And there are also some certificates that you also need to have, because if you're letting your property out, you have to give these documents to tenants actually as part of compulsory documents that you need to give to them, that you have some of these bases covered. So depending on what you're doing, you could have a normal selective landlord's license, or you could have like HMO license if you're doing a HMO. So I had to get a landlord's selective license, and that cost me £583. And the next cost for me was my gas safety certificate. This is a very compulsory certificate that you need to have, and you need to do this certification every year if you own an investment property. So this is where a professional comes into your property to check your boiler, to check your plumbing and all of that. And this cost me £90, right? Now, the next cost I had to incur was the EICR certificate. So this is to make sure that all of your electricals are in tip-top shape, and you do get a professional to come in as well and do this assessment, basically. Now, I had to do this twice, unfortunately, because the first time I did the certification, the property didn't pass. So I did pay £120 originally. And basically, so if they come and do the assessment and you don't pass, they will identify issues that you need to fix. So you're meant to go and fix the issue, and then you can then maybe call someone back to check again. Now, this EICR certificate is meant to last you for 5 years. So do it every 5 years. So I had to do mine twice. So I ended up spending £240 on that. The next cost that I probably would have incurred would have been EPC, but I didn't end up doing that because the current EPC certificate on the house, which is like the energy certificate, was still going to last to like 2032. So I didn't bother with that. I know that I still have to do that on my own, because as at the time they did it, at least that was the energy rating. So I'll probably do that a bit later. So now the next cost will probably be around the refurb cost. Now, this property didn't have so much to do. There was a lot of cosmetic work that I needed to do. Then it also didn't have a functioning kitchen, and I wanted to do the kitchen. So the kitchen probably took bulk of the cost, and then I had to paint all over. I had to change some curtains. I also had to do some work around the gutter and the roof and a bit of that. So that ended up costing me about £7,000. Knowing what I know now, I know I could have saved so much more on that refurb cost. But hey, you know what? It's the first one, so it's allowed. So I spent about £7,000 on the refurb. Now, the next cost for me was furnishing. So my strategy was that I wanted to let the property out as a fully furnished property to anyone who's taking it. And the reason I wanted to do that was because I wanted to have a higher rent on the property. So I wanted it furnished. That cost me another £7,000 to do the furnishing. So I bought all of the beds, the dining table, sofa, basically put the house in a state where you can just move into the property just like we do in London. However, also knowing what I know now, what I've also realized is that in a place like Liverpool, you having a furnished property, if you're working with agents especially, there is no real difference in how much rent you can actually, get. At least that's what, a lot of the agents have told me, that, it doesn't really make too much difference if the property is furnished or not. However, you know what, I will do a separate video on how much I have made in terms of rental income on the property in another video, and then you can be the judge of whether or not it pays to let out the property as a furnished house or just leave it as something bare. I would say if you are doing a buy to let, you absolutely don't have to furnish. You don't even have to put all of the appliances that I put in the kitchen, the microwave, the washing machine and everything. You don't have to do all of that. So that would save you a whole lot of costs, right? Upfront. You don't have to incur all of that upfront. So based on all of these costs, post getting the keys, I did spend another £14,913. Jesus. This property investing is not for the weak. So there are some other costs that I didn't put into this. So miscellaneous. So again, I'm based in London and I had to travel to Liverpool for viewings. I did that twice. I stayed in hotels. I obviously had to, feed myself while I was there. And I also stayed in Liverpool for almost 2 months because I did most of the refurb myself as well. So I would say in terms of transportation, hotel, feeding, I probably spent another, at the minimum, maybe £1,500 just for all of that viewing and hotel and transportation and feeding as well. So that's another cost that I had to incur. So looking at everything from start to finish, I did spend £54,217.42 to get my first investment property onto the market. Now, I always say this, property investing is not a get rich quick scheme. This is a long-term game. So if you're getting discouraged by this number, just know that your situation might be totally different. And for example, you could save another, £7,000 in my case now if you're not doing any form of furnishing. If you're not trying to overdo in terms of even the refurb, because if I'm being totally honest, it wasn't like the house that I bought was in a total bad condition. You can actually save a bit more on the refurb cost as well. Another thing that you could save on, obviously, the sourcing fee and all of the cost that I had to incur because, I was looking for someone to help me with the whole process in the beginning. That obviously would also save you a whole lot of money at the end of the day. But as of today, according to Zoopla, which is a platform that I use to track and monitor the valuation of my investment properties, right now, that property that I bought for £110,000, according to Zoopla now, on the lower end is valued at £125,000, and on the higher end is valued at £135,000. But hey, I haven't done a formal valuation on the property. I bought the property in July of 2023, so potentially it's appreciated a little bit. So if I wanted to sell now, I'll probably be looking at the property in that particular price range. But obviously I'm keeping this property for a long term, so I'm not looking to sell it anytime soon. So we'll see what a property valuation is looking like in a few more years. I hope this video has been helpful, and I hope that I've not scared you off with the figures of how much I've spent in buying this property. But obviously everyone's situation is different, but these are things that you have to think about when you are looking at buying an investment property. It goes beyond just deposit and stamp duty. There are other costs that you have to think about in between. I hope this video has been helpful, and if you've enjoyed this video, please make sure you like, subscribe and share, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.